They took an Apache woman away, and a legendary cowboy turned the night into a death sentence. The sun hung low over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in streaks of orange and red. The wind swept across the dry land, carrying with it the scent of sagebrush and dust. In a small Apache village nestled between the rocky cliffs, life moved slowly, in rhythm with the seasons and the land. Among the people lived a young Apache woman named Nayeli. She was known for her courage, her sharp mind, and the way she cared for her people. From an early age, she had been trained in the skills that every Apache learned: tracking, hunting, and understanding the land. But beyond her skill, she had a spirit that seemed untouchable, a quiet strength that drew the admiration of everyone around her. That morning, Nayeli had been helping her grandmother gather herbs near the edge of the canyon. The village was peaceful, the only sounds being the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional bird overhead. Nayeli had been carefully picking the plants her grandmother needed, humming softly to herself, when she noticed a strange silence. The birds had stopped singing, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. She straightened up and scanned the horizon. Far off, dust rose in small clouds, moving too quickly to be natural. Nayeli's heart skipped a beat. She knew something was wrong. From behind a rock, men appeared, mounted on horses. They wore hats that shaded their eyes, and their faces were hardened by years of living outside the law. They had come with one purpose: to take Nayeli away. Panic rippled through her, but she did not show fear. Nayeli had learned long ago that fear made a person vulnerable. She crouched behind the rock, watching, trying to think of a way to escape. The men split up, surrounding the area with careful precision. One of them spotted her and shouted, and in that moment everything moved too fast. Nayeli ran, her feet kicking up dust, weaving through the sparse trees and rocks, but the men were skilled riders. Within moments they caught up and seized her. She struggled, but it was no use. The men tied her hands and placed her on one of their horses, leading her away from the only home she had ever known. Back in the village, the first warning came from a scout who had been tracking animals near the canyon. He returned, panting and wide-eyed, and told the elders what had happened. Shock spread through the community. Nayeli's father, a respected warrior, clenched his fists. He wanted to rush after them, but the elders urged caution. The desert was vast, and the men could be anywhere. They needed a plan, someone who knew the land and could track the kidnappers without being seen. The village council gathered, speaking in low, urgent voices. Every word carried weight. Nayeli's mother wept quietly, but even in her grief, she knew that fear would not save her daughter. Hope, courage, and careful thinking might. Far away, over the rolling plains and dry hills, a man sat on his porch, polishing his rifle. His name was Silas McGraw, though most people only called him Silas or the Cowboy. He was a legend in these parts, known for his skill with horses, his sharp aim, and his unshakable sense of justice. He had been a young man when the frontier was still wild, learning to survive in a land where only the strong and clever could endure. He had seen countless injustices, and he had made it his life's work to stop wrongdoers when the law could not. That morning, as he cleaned his rifle, a rider approached from the horizon, galloping with urgency. The rider carried a message that would change the course of the day. It told of a kidnapped Apache woman and the danger she faced. Silas felt a chill run down his spine, not from fear but from the weight of responsibility. He knew the men who had taken her were dangerous, likely armed and ruthless, but he also knew the desert, its hidden paths and its dangers. He had spent years learning its secrets, the narrow canyons, the hidden springs, the places where a person could move unseen. He would need all of that knowledge to save her. Without hesitation, he saddled his horse and set out toward the rising dust that marked the kidnapper's trail. As the sun climbed higher, the heat began to press down, but Silas welcomed it. The desert tested a man's resolve, and he had never turned from a test. Meanwhile, Nayeli struggled on the horse that carried her. She refused to let fear control her thoughts. She studied the men around her, noting the patterns in their riding, the rhythm of their movements. Every detail mattered. It could mean the difference between life and death. She had been taught that strength was not only physical but mental. She tried to plan, to think of ways she could slip away if the opportunity arose. At night, she would have to be ready, for the desert could be more dangerous than the men themselves. The kidnappers, confident in their control, rode hard. They spoke little, communicating mostly through gestures and brief, harsh words. They did not realize that their captive was far from helpless. Nayeli's mind raced with strategies, and though her body was tied, her spirit remained free. She watched the sun setting behind the mesas, knowing that the coming night could bring either escape or disaster. Every moment felt stretched, every sound amplified, the distant howl of a coyote, the flutter of wings in the cliffs, the soft clink of spurs on rocks. She was alive, alert, and determined to survive. As Silas rode across the desert, he remembered similar situations he had faced before. The frontier had taught him that patience and careful observation were just as important as courage and skill. He followed the trail of disturbed earth, broken branches, and faint hoofprints. Sometimes he had to move slowly, hiding in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to approach. He knew the men would not expect anyone to follow so quickly. The thought strengthened his resolve. There was no room for mistakes. Night fell, bringing cooler air and the sounds of the desert awakening. Crickets chirped, and the distant wind carried the smell of sage and dust. Nayeli, still bound, leaned against her captor's horse, her mind alert to every noise. The men began to feel uneasy, sensing that the night held more than just darkness. Silas, moving under the cover of shadows, closed the distance without being seen. Every step was deliberate, calculated. Every rock and tree provided cover. The night was silent, except for the occasional rustle of a lizard or the snap of a twig underfoot. But in that silence, a storm of action was brewing, one that would soon change everything. By the time the moon rose high in the sky, the stage was set. Nayeli remained defiant, her spirit unbroken despite exhaustion. Silas was near, guided by his knowledge and determination. The kidnappers, confident but unaware of what was approaching, felt the night stretch endlessly before them. Somewhere in the distance, the desert seemed to hold its breath. The first part of this story closes with tension thick in the air, a silent promise that the coming hours would decide the fate of the brave young woman and the legendary cowboy determined to save her. The desert stretched endlessly, golden in the late morning sun, but Silas. McGraw did not notice the heat or the glare. His eyes were fixed on the trail left by the kidnappers. The dust they had kicked up yesterday had settled in the canyon, but careful observation revealed every detail. The marks of horse hooves, footprints where the men had dismounted, broken branches, and small rocks shifted in their path. Silas had spent a lifetime reading the land, and now every small clue told him something important. He slowed his horse, moving carefully, studying the trail, imagining the kidnappers' next steps. He knew they would try to stay hidden, to mislead anyone who might follow, but he was prepared for tricks. He had faced people like this before. The sun climbed higher, and the air became dry and sharp. Silas paused at a rocky ridge to scan the surrounding canyons. Far below, he could see the narrow path the kidnappers had taken, winding between the cliffs like a thin, silver ribbon. He could feel the tension in his own body, the anticipation that comes when every step matters. He thought of Nayeli, the young Apache woman whose life now rested in his hands. Her courage had already reached him through the stories carried by the riders he had met on the trail. He did not know her personally yet, but he felt the weight of responsibility as if it were his own. Meanwhile, Nayeli had been alert since the first light of dawn. Her captors had made camp near a dry riverbed, thinking they were hidden from the world. She was given little to eat and water was scarce, but she observed carefully. Every movement the men made, every whisper between them told her something about their plan. She remembered lessons her father had taught her as a child. Watch closely. Listen carefully. The land speaks if you know how to hear it. She used those lessons now. She memorized the paths around the camp, the locations of rocks and trees that could hide a movement, and the ways she might escape if the moment came. She refused to let despair take hold. Fear could cloud judgment, courage could open doors. She chose courage. The kidnappers, unaware of Silas's presence, moved on the second day with haste. They spoke little, only to give brief commands to each other. One of them was the leader, older and rougher than the others, with a sharp eye and a quick temper. He often glanced back, sensing that something was not right, but he could not see Silas. The legendary cowboy was careful, keeping to the shadows and using the desert's natural cover to move silently. He watched the kidnappers for hours, noting patterns, when they stopped to rest, when they tied their horses, when they adjusted their pace. Each observation allowed him to plan the next step, to close the distance without revealing himself. Silas moved slowly, always scanning. The desert was both an ally and a challenge. The narrow canyons provided cover, but they also limited movement. The rocky terrain could hide a person, but it could also hide danger. He remembered lessons from his youth, when he had traveled the land with only a horse, a rifle, and his instincts. He had learned that the desert was alive, that it gave signs if a person was willing to see them. Broken twigs, shifting sand, faint shadows, all these told a story. And the story now was clear. The kidnappers were moving too quickly to notice him, and that meant he had the advantage of patience. As night approached, the temperature dropped and the desert transformed. Shadows stretched long across the sand and rocks, and the air smelled of cool earth and distant pine. Nayeli had learned to listen in the quiet of the desert. The wind carried sounds that were invisible in the bright day. The soft padding of hooves, the murmur of voices, the rustle of a snake in the brush. She used these sounds to keep track of the kidnappers' positions, to note where they made mistakes, and to imagine her own escape. Every night she held hope, even as exhaustion crept into her muscles. Hope, she knew, was as necessary as water or food in the desert. Silas had found a narrow pass where the kidnappers would have to pass during the night. He dismounted, leading his horse quietly along the rocky path. Every step was deliberate. He thought of Nayeli and of the risk the kidnappers posed. He did not rush. He knew that haste could lead to mistakes, and mistakes in the desert could be fatal. He moved with the skill of a man who had spent decades learning to survive, to hunt, and to protect. And tonight, the desert itself seemed to guide him, showing him the safest paths and the points where he could observe without being seen. The kidnappers stopped at a small mesa to rest. They built a fire, speaking in low voices, laughing occasionally at jokes meant to ease their tension. Nayeli listened, noting the location of each man, the way they placed their weapons, and the patterns in their movements. She was tired, but her mind remained sharp. She remembered the lessons of her grandmother. Even when bound, your mind is free. Use it. She whispered softly to herself, planning, imagining ways to turn the night in her favor. She did not know how she would escape yet, but she knew that she would find a way. She had to. Silas watched from a distance, hidden in a shadowy crevice. The firelight from the kidnappers' camp flickered on his face as he observed, counting men, noting weapons, and judging their vigilance. He knew that rushing in now could risk Nayeli's life. Patience, careful planning, and timing would be crucial. He thought of the many times he had faced dangerous men, of the lessons learned from each encounter. Tonight, he would need every ounce of experience he had. The desert was quiet around him, holding its breath. Even the wind seemed to pause as if it too understood the importance of the moment. Hours passed. The kidnappers grew sleepy, their movements slower, their words less careful. Nayeli remained alert, her body aching but her mind focused. She observed, remembering every detail she had learned about survival, every story from her father and grandmother. She knew that the right moment could come at any second. The desert night was long, and time stretched endlessly. She felt the stars overhead, a vast canopy of light, and thought of the stories the elders had told of the people who had walked these lands before. She drew strength from their courage, imagining herself as part of a long line of brave souls who had faced danger and survived. Silas, too, felt the weight of time. He moved slowly along the ridge, inching closer to the camp with every careful step. His horse followed silently, trained to obey without sound or hesitation. He could hear Naeli's soft breathing in the distance, carried faintly by the desert air. He felt a surge of determination. He would not fail. He would not allow harm to come to her. The night was long, but he had survived longer nights. He had faced danger and come through, and tonight would be no different. As dawn approached, the kidnappers stirred, unaware that they were being observed with precision. Naeli, exhausted but alert, kept herself still and quiet, studying the shadows, the positions of her captors, and the patterns of movement. Silas was near, planning, waiting for the exact moment to act. The first rays of sunlight touched the desert, revealing the outlines of rocks, canyons, and distant hills. The stage was set for the next step. The chase had been long, testing endurance, patience, and courage. But it had also brought two determined people, one a captive, the other a rescuer, closer to a confrontation that would decide the fate of the night. The desert, vast and unforgiving, seemed alive with anticipation. Every rock, every tree, every shadow held a secret, a clue, a possibility. Naeli's spirit remained unbroken. Silas's resolve was unwavering. And somewhere between the ridges and the mesas, the story was about to take its next turn, a turn that would demand courage, cleverness, and determination from both the young woman and the legendary cowboy who had sworn to protect her. The night was deep and quiet, the desert, draped in a blanket of darkness. Only the moon and the stars offered light, casting long, pale shadows across the rocky terrain. Silas McGraw moved carefully, every sense alert. He had spent hours observing the kidnappers' camp, studying their habits, and now the moment had arrived. The air was heavy with tension, almost as if the desert itself knew that a turning point was near. Silas's heart beat steadily, not with fear but with focus. He knew that a single mistake could put Naeli in danger. Patience, strategy, and silence would be his greatest allies tonight. The kidnappers' camp was set on a narrow plateau, a small circle of firelight illuminating their figures. They were confident, believing that no one had followed them. Their laughter had faded hours earlier into quiet murmurs, replaced by the crackle of the dying fire. Naeli sat quietly, her back to a rock, her hands still bound. She watched the men carefully, noting the soft movements, the rising and falling of their breathing, and the occasional glance at the stars overhead. She knew that help was near, but she also understood that she could not rely entirely on it. Her survival depended as much on her mind as on anyone else's courage. Silas positioned himself on a ridge above the camp, hidden in shadows. From this vantage point, he could see every detail, the placement of weapons, the positions of the men, and the patterns of their movement. He whispered softly to himself, planning each step. The night was his ally, allowing him to approach undetected. He knew the terrain well. The rocks could shield him, the shadows could hide him, and the desert could carry sound away if he moved carefully. Years of experience had taught him how to use these advantages, and tonight they would all be necessary. As he prepared, Naeli noticed subtle movements in the shadows. Her captors had grown careless, shifting positions as fatigue settled over them. She could see small gaps in their attention, moments when they were not looking at her, moments that could become opportunities. Her mind raced, imagining every possibility, every way to turn the situation in her favor. She thought of the stories her grandmother had told, of women who had survived impossible situations through courage and cleverness. She whispered quietly, steadying herself, keeping her thoughts focused. Escape, she knew, would require timing, courage, and careful observation. Silas made his move slowly. Step by step, he descended the ridge, using rocks and sparse bushes as cover. His movements were quiet, precise, and calculated. He adjusted his position with each shift of wind and moonlight, ensuring that he remained unseen. The desert was alive around him. The soft rustle of leaves, the distant cry of an owl, and the whisper of the wind all became part of his awareness. He was not rushing. Patience was essential. One wrong move could alert the kidnappers, and Nayeli's life depended on his caution. From the camp below, the kidnappers' attention faltered. One of them rose, stretching and yawning, unaware that a shadow was descending upon him from above. Another shifted, brushing sand off his boots, while the third leaned against a rock, his eyes half closed. Silas noted every action, every small lapse in focus. The desert night, quiet and vast, allowed him to move almost invisibly. He could feel the tension building, a silent promise that the next hour would decide everything. He steadied himself, preparing to act with precision and care. Nayeli's mind worked in tandem with Silas's strategy, though they did not yet know each other. She noticed the shifting shadows, the glint of moonlight on metal, the way the wind carried sounds across the plateau. She understood, instinctively, that someone was approaching. Her spirit remained unbroken, her courage unwavering. She prepared herself for the possibility of action, imagining the ways she could move if a distraction arose. Her training, her instincts, and her determination were all focused on survival and freedom. Silas reached the edge of the camp. He crouched low, positioning himself where he could observe without being seen. His rifle was ready, not for violence but for precision and control. His plan was to create a distraction that would allow Nayeli to slip free, not to harm anyone unnecessarily. He knew that every detail mattered: the timing of a sound, the direction of a movement, and the use of darkness to his advantage. The night seemed to hold its breath as he prepared to act. A small rock shifted under Silas's hand, sending a soft clink across the plateau. One of the kidnappers turned, glancing toward the sound. Silas froze, letting the moment pass. The man returned to his previous position, unaware that his movements had been watched and understood. Silence returned, thick and heavy. The desert was alive with anticipation. Silas took a deep breath, feeling the rhythm of the night, waiting for the right moment to act. He could feel Nayeli's courage, even from a distance, guiding him. The connection between the two, though unspoken, was palpable. Suddenly, a soft wind blew, carrying the sound of footsteps toward the camp from a different direction. Silas used the moment, throwing a small rock to create a noise that drew the attention of one of the kidnappers. The man rose, moving cautiously toward the sound, leaving a small gap in their formation. Silas seized the opportunity, signaling silently to Nayeli with a small movement he knew she would understand. She saw it, her eyes widening with hope. The moment of action had arrived. Nayeli carefully moved, using the rocks and shadows as cover. She stayed low, silent, and deliberate. Her hands were still tied, but she was not powerless. She understood the terrain, the positions of her captors, and the timing needed to act. Each step brought her closer to freedom, each breath measured and controlled. The desert night became her ally, shielding her movements and guiding her path. Her courage, sharpened by fear and determination, kept her focused on the goal: escape. Silas watched her progress, adjusting his own movements to protect her. He stayed hidden, ready to intervene if necessary. The kidnappers were beginning to realize that something was happening, but they were confused and uncoordinated. The desert, vast and dark, made it difficult for them to see clearly or respond quickly. Silas's careful planning and patience were paying off. Every step Naeli took brought her closer to safety, and every decision Silas made ensured that the moment would succeed. The tension reached its peak as Naeli and Silas moved closer to the edge of the plateau, where freedom awaited. The kidnappers were alert now, shouting warnings, but it was too late. Naeli, guided by her instincts and Silas's presence, slipped past them, moving with quiet determination. The desert night, once filled with uncertainty, now became a path to safety. Silas followed, ensuring that she remained protected and that the kidnappers could not regroup to interfere. By the time the first light of dawn began to touch the desert, Naeli and Silas had moved to a safer distance. The kidnappers, exhausted and confused, were left behind, unable to comprehend how the young woman had escaped from their control. Naeli's heart pounded, her body tired but her spirit soaring. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and danger, and she had prevailed. Silas, ever vigilant, remained beside her, ready to ensure that the final moments of their escape were secure. As the sun rose, painting the desert in warm hues of gold and pink, Naeli and Silas paused to catch their breath. The night had been long, tense, and challenging, but it had also revealed something essential. Courage, patience, and cleverness could overcome even the most dangerous situations. Naeli looked at Silas with gratitude and respect, understanding that his experience, skill, and determination had been as important as her own courage and intelligence. The desert around them seemed to breathe, the silence now filled with a sense of accomplishment and hope. The journey that night had been a test of endurance, strategy, and trust. Naeli had learned that even in the darkest moments, careful observation and determination could lead to freedom. Silas had shown that patience, planning, and respect for life could guide action without unnecessary harm. Together, they had turned the night into a victory, a triumph of courage and cleverness over danger. The desert, vast and unforgiving, had witnessed their struggle and their success. By the time they moved further from the camp, the first rays of sunlight had fully illuminated the canyon. The beauty of the desert, with its rocks, sand, and distant mountains, contrasted sharply with the danger of the night that had passed. Naeli felt a renewed sense of purpose and strength. Silas, observing her, knew that the journey was far from over, but the night had proven that together, they could face any challenge. The desert, once a silent witness to fear and danger, now seemed to offer a quiet approval of their courage and resilience. The events of the night left a lasting impression on both. Naeli had discovered the depths of her own strength and intelligence, realizing that even when bound and facing uncertainty, a sharp mind and brave heart could guide action. Silas had reaffirmed his belief in patience, observation, and the careful use of skill to protect and guide others. The night had been a test, a battle of wits, courage, and timing, and it had ended with hope and survival. The desert, vast and timeless, had held them in its embrace and witnessed a story of bravery and determination that would not soon be forgotten. The first light of dawn stretched across the desert, painting the cliffs and canyons in shades of gold and soft pink. The night's tension had passed, but the air still held a sense of quiet caution. Naeli, the young Apache woman, stood beside Silas McGraw, the legendary cowboy who had risked so much to reach her. Her hands were still slightly stiff from the ropes, but her spirit was free. The events of the night had been exhausting, yet they had also been empowering. Naeli felt a surge of relief and gratitude as she realized that her courage, intelligence, and patience had guided her through danger, and now she was safe. The kidnappers, disoriented and defeated, had fled deeper into the canyon after the distraction and escape. Some had scattered into the desert, unsure of the best path to take, while others had abandoned hope of finding Naeli again. Silas had observed their movements from a safe distance, ensuring that no further threats would reach her. He knew that the desert, vast as it was, could hide dangers, but with careful planning and vigilance, they could move to safety. Silas helped Nayeli regain her balance, adjusting her position on her horse and speaking quietly to reassure her. His calm, steady presence was comforting, and she felt a bond forming between them, built on trust and shared courage. Nayeli glanced at the desert around them. The landscape, once a place of fear and uncertainty, now seemed alive with possibility. The cliffs, the canyons, and the distant mesas were no longer merely obstacles. They were reminders of her own strength and resilience. She had faced danger head-on, relying on her instincts, her knowledge of the land, and her ability to stay calm under pressure. Each step she had taken, each observation she had made during the night, had brought her closer to freedom. Now, standing beside Silas, she felt a sense of pride in her own courage, a quiet acknowledgement that she had survived through intelligence and determination. Silas, watching her, felt a similar sense of satisfaction. He had faced many challenges throughout his life, but this experience reminded him of why he had chosen this path. Protecting the vulnerable, standing for justice, and using his skills to guide others safely through danger were not easy tasks, but they were deeply meaningful. Silas had relied on patience, observation, and careful planning to ensure Nayeli's safety. Now, seeing her unharmed and determined, he understood that every decision he had made had been worth the effort. The desert, which had tested both of them, now seemed to offer quiet approval of their success. The journey back to the Apache village was not simple. The desert was vast, and although the immediate danger had passed, the landscape still held challenges. Rocky cliffs, dry riverbeds, and narrow passes required careful navigation. Silas led the way, choosing paths that offered both safety and speed. Nayeli followed, alert and attentive, using her knowledge of the land to support their progress. Together, they moved with a sense of purpose, guided by the morning light and their shared determination. The journey itself became part of the story, a testament to their resilience and cooperation. Along the way, Nayeli spoke softly, sharing details of her experience with Silas. She described how she had observed the kidnappers, noting their movements and habits, and how she had remained calm despite the fear and uncertainty. Silas listened carefully, impressed by her clarity, intelligence, and courage. He understood that her survival had depended not only on his guidance, but also on her own quick thinking and resourcefulness. Their conversation strengthened their bond, creating a sense of mutual respect and understanding. Each story she told, each observation she shared, became a reminder of her bravery and the strength of the human spirit. As the day progressed, the desert revealed both beauty and challenge. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the rocks, and the heat began to press down on them. Silas and Nayeli moved carefully, conserving energy and maintaining focus. Water was limited, so they paused periodically to rest and hydrate from small streams and hidden springs. These pauses offered moments of reflection, allowing them to appreciate the quiet majesty of the desert. The cliffs, the sand, and the distant mountains were reminders of both the dangers they had faced and the strength they had found within themselves. By midday, they had reached a point where the desert opened into a wide valley. From this vantage, the Apache village was visible in the distance, a small collection of dwellings nestled among the cliffs. Nayeli's heart lifted at the sight. The familiar sight of home brought a renewed sense of hope and relief. She could almost hear the voices of her people, the sounds of daily life that had seemed so distant during her capture. Silas observed her reaction, understanding that this moment was significant. It was not merely the end of a dangerous night. It was a return to safety, to community, and to the life she had fought to protect. As they approached the village, Nayeli's family noticed them first. Her parents ran forward, worry etched on their faces, followed by elders and neighbors who had gathered after hearing of her capture. The reunion was quiet but full of emotion. Tears, hugs, and gentle words expressed relief and gratitude. Nayeli's father embraced her tightly, proud of her bravery, while her mother whispered words of comfort and admiration. Silas remained nearby, allowing the family their private moment while ensuring that the area remained secure. The villagers, once tense and fearful, now felt a collective sense of relief and gratitude. Nayeli spoke briefly to the elders, explaining her experience and emphasizing the importance of courage, observation, and patience. Her words carried weight, not only because of her ordeal but also because of her calm and clear expression. The villagers listened intently, recognizing the value of the lessons she had learned. Silas offered support where needed, answering questions and reassuring the community that Nayeli was safe. His presence was quiet but commanding, a reminder that justice and protection could be achieved through skill, strategy, and respect for life. The day continued with preparations for Nayeli's full return to daily life. She received food, water, and care to restore her energy. Silas assisted in ensuring that the paths she had traveled were monitored for safety, and the villagers worked together to strengthen their community's defenses and awareness. Conversations revolved around caution, preparedness, and the importance of supporting one another. Nayeli's experience became a story of resilience, courage, and the power of careful planning, inspiring the community to value observation, patience, and cooperation. As evening approached, the desert transformed once again. Shadows stretched long across the rocks, and the air grew cooler. Nayeli and Silas sat quietly on a small rise overlooking the village, reflecting on the events of the past 2 days. Nayeli felt a deep sense of gratitude, not only for her rescue, but also for the strength she had discovered within herself. Silas reflected on the importance of patience, observation, and careful action, recognizing that the night's success had been a combination of both their efforts. Together, they understood that courage and careful planning could overcome even the most difficult challenges. The desert around them was quiet, the silence filled with meaning. The cliffs, the canyons, and the distant mesas seemed to echo their thoughts, a reminder that the land had witnessed both danger and triumph. Nayeli and Silas shared a sense of accomplishment, a recognition that the journey had strengthened them in unexpected ways. They had faced uncertainty, fear, and risk, yet had emerged with hope, courage, and a renewed appreciation for the power of careful observation and bravery. The desert had tested them, and they had proven their strength. By nightfall, Nayeli was fully reunited with her family. Stories were shared, lessons were recounted, and the community came together in quiet celebration of her return. The events of the night, though tense and dangerous, had reinforced the values of courage, careful thinking, and cooperation. Nayeli's bravery and intelligence were acknowledged, and Silas's skill, patience, and dedication were honored. The village, once tense with fear, now felt secure, knowing that courage, strategy, and vigilance could protect them in the face of danger. As the stars appeared in the sky, Nayeli and Silas looked out over the desert. The vast landscape stretched endlessly before them, a reminder of both the challenges they had faced and the strength they had discovered. Nayeli felt a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that her experience had not only tested her courage, but also revealed the depth of her own abilities. Silas, observing her, knew that the night's events had created a bond of trust, respect, and shared experience that would remain with them both. The desert, silent and timeless, had witnessed their struggle and their triumph, and it now seemed to offer a quiet blessing of safety and hope. The rescue and reckoning were complete. Nayeli had survived, guided by her intelligence and courage. Silas had fulfilled his role as protector and strategist, using skill, patience, and careful planning to ensure her safety. The desert, once a place of uncertainty and danger, had become a witness to bravery, determination, and the power of careful observation. As night fell fully over the village, a sense of peace settled in. The story of the young Apache woman and the legendary cowboy would be remembered as a tale of courage, careful action, and the triumph of hope over danger. The morning sun rose slowly over the Arizona desert, casting warm golden light across the rugged landscape. The village, now fully awake, stirred with a sense of calm and safety that had not existed for several days. The story of Nayeli's capture and her daring escape spread quietly among the villagers, though she herself remained humble about her courage. Silas McGraw stood a short distance away, observing the small community he had helped protect. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the night's danger had passed and that Nayeli was safely returned to her people. The desert, vast and eternal, seemed to stretch endlessly, a silent witness to the bravery, determination, and resilience displayed over the past days. Nayeli moved through the village with her family, offering gratitude to those who had helped in her return and sharing moments of quiet laughter and relief. Her parents embraced her repeatedly, their eyes glistening with pride and relief. The elders listened carefully to her account of the events, noting her courage and the way she had stayed calm and observant even under duress. The community, once tense and fearful, now seemed infused with a renewed sense of unity and strength. They spoke of the importance of vigilance, careful thinking, and bravery, understanding that Nayeli's experience had shown them the value of courage and quick thinking. Every word carried weight, every story reinforced the lessons learned through hardship. Silas, ever watchful, moved among the villagers quietly, offering guidance where necessary and answering questions about what had occurred. His presence was calm and reassuring, yet full of authority. He had always believed that the best protection came from a combination of skill, patience, and understanding, and today that belief had been proven true. He watched Nayeli speak with her people and could see the strength in her eyes, a strength that was as much about intelligence and courage as it was about survival. Silas knew that the young woman would carry the lessons of the night with her for the rest of her life, and that the community, too, would benefit from the wisdom she had gained. The villagers worked together to ensure that life returned to normal, though the events of recent days had left a lasting impression. Paths were checked, supplies were organized, and the elders reinforced the importance of careful observation and readiness. Nayeli, now fully reunited with her family, shared her experiences with young members of the community, teaching them the value of courage, careful planning, and staying calm under pressure. Her story became both a warning and a lesson, demonstrating that bravery and intelligence could overcome even the most difficult challenges. The desert, surrounding and vast, was no longer only a place of fear. It was also a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Silas and Nayeli walked to the edge of the village, overlooking the cliffs and canyons that had been part of her ordeal. Nayeli's eyes traced the paths she had taken, the ridges and mesas that had both hidden danger and offered protection. She felt a sense of gratitude for the land that had taught her so much about herself, about courage, and about observation. Silas, standing beside her, spoke quietly, reminding her that her strength and intelligence had been as important as his guidance in the night's events. They shared a quiet understanding, a bond formed not just by survival, but by mutual respect and courage. Nayeli thought of the future, of her role within her community and the lessons she could pass on. She realized that her experience had changed her, not in a way that made her fearful or cautious, but in a way that strengthened her resolve and her understanding of the world around her. Courage was not simply a matter of action. It was a matter of mindset, awareness, and careful observation. She had faced uncertainty, danger, and fear, and emerged stronger. The desert had been a teacher, revealing the importance of preparation, patience, and bravery. She felt a quiet pride in what she had accomplished and a deep respect for the people who had supported her, including Silas, whose skill and determination had been instrumental in her rescue. Silas, too, reflected on the lessons of the past days. He had lived a long life on the frontier, facing danger and protecting those who could not protect themselves. Yet this experience reminded him once again of the importance of patience, strategy, and understanding. The desert, vast and unforgiving, had tested them both, and they had emerged with lessons that would last a lifetime. Silas understood that his role as a protector was not just about skill with a rifle or knowledge of the land. It was also about careful observation, respect for life, and guiding others with wisdom and courage. The young woman's bravery had reinforced this truth, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose. As the afternoon sun warmed the village, Naeli and Silas prepared to part ways. She would return fully to her family, her community, and her life, while Silas would continue his journey across the frontier, helping others in need. Their farewell was quiet but meaningful. Naeli expressed her gratitude, not only for his protection but also for the guidance he had offered during the night. Silas nodded, acknowledging her courage and intelligence. He reminded her that the lessons learned from experience, observation, and careful action were tools she could carry with her always. Their bond was unspoken yet deep, formed through shared challenges and mutual respect. The villagers gathered briefly to see Silas off. Children and elders alike looked on, understanding that he was a figure of courage, skill, and wisdom. Naeli's parents thanked him with sincerity, recognizing the effort and risk he had undertaken to ensure their daughter's safety. Silas responded with quiet humility, emphasizing that the true heroism had been displayed by Naeli herself, whose courage, patience, and intelligence had guided her through danger. The desert, stretching endlessly beyond the village, stood witness to this exchange, a reminder of both the challenges faced and the lessons learned. As Silas mounted his horse and prepared to ride into the wide expanse of the desert, Naeli watched with a mixture of admiration and respect. She understood that the frontier was a place of endless challenges, where courage, careful observation, and intelligence were essential for survival. Silas rode with steady determination, moving along the paths he knew so well, his silhouette framed against the golden light of late afternoon. The villagers waved quietly, acknowledging the man who had helped protect one of their own and who had reminded them all of the value of skill, patience, and courage. Naeli turned her gaze back to her village, her heart full of pride and relief. She reflected on the past days, the fear, the uncertainty, and the challenges she had faced, and recognized the strength she had discovered within herself. She understood that her courage had been strengthened by observation, careful thought, and determination. The desert had tested her, but it had also offered lessons, guidance, and a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. She knew that she would carry these lessons forward, sharing them with her family and her community, ensuring that the knowledge gained would be remembered and honored. The sun continued its descent, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple. Naeli and her family prepared for the evening, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet reflection. The village had survived a dangerous event, and in doing so had grown stronger. The story of Naeli's courage and Silas's skill would be passed down, becoming part of the collective memory of the community. The lessons of the desert, the importance of careful observation, patience, and courage, would endure through generations, guiding those who faced challenges in the future. As night fell, the desert stretched endlessly under the stars. Silas rode further into the distance, moving through the vast landscape that had been both a place of challenge and a place of learning. He reflected on the events, understanding that every moment of careful action, observation, and patience had been crucial. The desert had tested both him and Naeli, revealing the importance of courage, intelligence, and cooperation. And now, as he moved forward, he carried the knowledge that his actions had ensured safety, inspired courage, and left a lasting impact on those he had helped protect. Nayeli, looking out over the desert from her village, felt a sense of connection to the land, to her community, and to the lessons she had learned. She understood that courage was not merely a matter of facing danger, but also a matter of preparation, observation, and clear thinking. She had discovered her own strength and resilience, and she knew that the experiences of the past days would remain with her, guiding her actions and inspiring others. The desert, vast and timeless, had been a witness to her bravery and to the careful, determined efforts that had ensured her safety. The story of Nayeli and Silas became a part of the village's history, a reminder of the importance of courage, intelligence, and careful action. It was a story that would be told for generations, a lesson in patience, observation, and resilience. The desert, silent and eternal, stood as a witness to their journey, a place where bravery, careful thought, and determination had triumphed over danger. And as the stars shone brightly overhead, both Nayeli and Silas understood that their paths, though separate now, had been forever linked by courage, respect, and the enduring lessons of the desert.